Hello, I'm Pittsburgh Pat, and this is a delightful three-way conversation, which usually they're one-on-one, but today we're going to have an interesting three-person conversation. So my guests are my friend Dan and my new friend Diego. So let's talk to Dan first about how this all came about, because Dan really orchestrated this.
I kind of did, yeah. And thanks, Patrick. So, for those of you who don't know, Patrick and I go way back. We're both from Pittsburgh and we both live in Pittsburgh at this time. And Diego was a student of mine when I was teaching classes out in California. And I happened to come across um, his TikTok page. And I was watching this, this student that I remember as being bright and intelligent and gifted and with the whole world at his feet academically, and he's doing these TikTok voices. And I'm like, first of all, this is incredible. Second of all, I had no idea you had this talent whatsoever. And third, why has no one else heard you? I mean, maybe other people have heard you, but in other words, why am I not hearing you on commercials? And I thought, this has to change. The world needs to hear your voices, and I hope we get to hear some of them in a little bit. And that's really all I want to say about that point to get us started.
We'll throw one out there, Diego, just so we can know what Dan's talking about.
Well, I guess probably some of my best ones come from SpongeBob SquarePants.
Awesome.
Well, because I grew up watching it, so definitely Patrick Star, like when he's talking to SpongeBob about how intelligent he is. The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma. Uh, Something like that, or even Squidward's laugh. um, but I kind of just uh it's usually something that I just did around my friends, because I mean I didn't really break it out in the middle of a classroom, but usually even some students that Dan had that eventually became friends of mine, they did hear my voices in person. And I mean it's just something that I've always kind of just done in a way. I never had any real training or anything like that. Kind of the same way that I did singing, even though I did a little bit of choir in high school and stuff like that. But I kind of just did this type of stuff. I kind of just find it a little easy to be able to manipulate my voice. Some voices come easier than others. But I definitely am just interested sometimes in just like seeing like, oh, might be able to impersonate that. I am definitely troubled with accents, though. Accents are not as easy to me. But definitely when it comes to being able to do an impression of a character is definitely something that I've always kind of found quite easy.
Two things about that are really interesting to me. First of all, very few people are bilingual with no accent in either language, right? And I know that you speak Spanish with no accent. You sound like a Mexican person speaking Spanish, and you sound like a person from the United States speaking English. So the fact that you have trouble with accents is really kind of interesting, maybe a little puzzling for me, but okay. And the other thing that you said that's interesting is a lot of people who are known as doing impressions, they are actually just paying homage to someone that they know. So they're not trying to do an accent. They're just remembering somebody that they know in real life, maybe somebody's dad or somebody's friend or something like that. So very interesting.
I have to say that the language thing caught me too, because one of the things that I was complimented on at an early age was my ability to have an accent. My first foreign language was French, so I had French teachers that, I mean, I excelled at it and was used to demonstrate it. And in fact, a friend invited me to his wedding. He was learning French and he had some French native speaking friends. And one of them at the reception said, "How long did you live in Paris?" And I said, "I've never been to Paris." And he said, "Wow, you have like a perfect Parisian accent." And it's just, I was going to ask you because I think that I have an ear for mimicry, like I'm like a mockingbird. I can pick that certain things I can pick up and then I can mimic it. And I think that's where my ability to do voice acting, to whatever degree it is. I have no formal training. I'd like to. I really am interested in getting involved in that now. But is that something that you think, is it from watching so many episodes of SpongeBob, you just know the intonations? And that's also funny too, because my name's Patrick, and when I teach little kids, they'll often say Patrick, and I'll say, yes, I'm Patrick, and I'll give them that, and they love it and they laugh, and that's a way to get a little rapport. But what do you think? Is it your ear mouth? Like, is there a connection? Like, is that what it is?
I think it's like that, and I think tying it back to even music too. That's kind of how I learned to play guitar, was more by ear than by actual lessons. So I didn't really have any formal training with that. And when it came to just kind of training my ear over the years, it kind of worked hand in hand, where through music I was able to get good intonations with voices, but also with voices I was able to get good intonation with music as well, being able to kind of find how I can manipulate my voice. Of course, sometimes it would hurt if I'm trying to do Roz from Monsters Inc. or something like that. But it like those raspier ones can hurt sometimes. But definitely it's some, for me, it's with accents. What's difficult is, especially when it comes to a British accent or anything of that kind of like lineage, whether it's Australian, whether it's a Scottish accent or Irish accent, they all just like, I try it and it just all starts to melt together, and then I end up in an Australian accent, even though I started off with like a Manchester accent.
Kevin Costner had that problem in Robin Hood, so don't worry about it. They called it
I
the
think he's better on
Mid-Atlantic
Yellowstone, right?
accent. He couldn't quite. It was American, sometimes it was British, and then finally halfway through the movie, they're like, just do your normal voice, and it's a mess. If you watch that movie, it's a mess. It's notorious in the film.
Yeah, so I think it does come from just a heavy influence that I had from cartoons, especially where just like watching SpongeBob all the time. I remember when I was like 9 years old, it's not a vivid memory, but I was with my brother and one of his friends, and he was spray painting his bike in our garage while we were just hanging out, and I just started reciting an entire SpongeBob episode with voices and everything, and I just went from beginning to end. I'm saying it's maybe a 20-minute episode, but I was able to just like churn it out, and it's something that like they just let me roll. They just let me go. And they got to the end. I got to the end and they were like, did you just do that? And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you just recited an entire SpongeBob episode and you did the voices too. What's wrong with you? and so like that's like one thing that I do remember from a young age, of like how I've done voices is just like the heavy influence of it, because I also have this like thing with my friends where they're like, how do you remember that reference from this specific TV show? Like, because I even remember in high school I got the distinction in our choir class. We did superlatives at the end of the year, and I was just like most likely to say something trivial, and so I would just be like, oh, like it's just like in that SpongeBob episode, and everyone would be like, yeah, Diego, it's like in that SpongeBob episode.
Little did they know this was going to
Right.
pay off. Who's laughing now?
Right.
Who's trivial now?
These are exactly the kind of skills though that Hollywood needs, and other places, because you need continuity coordinators, right? So like you need people that have a great attention to detail, that like say, no, that Cuisinart was not on that shelf, it was on that shelf. You need people, you know what I mean? Like you need people that can remember like what a character said in which scene and why that's important. And especially if you're doing rewrites, right? It's like, I mean, I could see where like these would be these talents would be able to play in multiple areas of performance and be in front of the camera and behind the camera, But I watched your TikTok, and yeah, you were really impressive. Unfortunately, I'm not as up to speed on some of the cartoons that you were doing, but I was convinced that they were original voices, like they were really close to what the original
And I
voices
want to
were.
clarify something too, since you just mentioned that, Patrick. You've never taken lessons for this, have you?
No. No, I've never taken any voice lessons. I'm actually a terrible actor. I've tried acting before, like in high school and stuff, and I wasn't very good at it. But yeah, I never really took lessons when it came to voice acting.
Hmm.
But I've even done like at my day job at the university I work at. They will sometimes need just someone to send a mass voicemail out to students that need some sort of announcement, whether it's like we're having an event on campus, or come join us for a mixer for all the admitted students and stuff like that. They'll ask me to do the voiceover for it, and I try to give it a little bit of flair, try to give it a bit. I mean, I don't try to be like those old 20s like radio commercials, like Bob Kuzak, who's like that's, I don't try to be like that, but I definitely like
Do you ever
found a little
do
bit.
do you ever do the truck and tractor pull guy? No.
I never have.
Saturday, we're gonna have a mixer. Like that kind of thing.
The monster truck rally.
That's right.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah. No, I never tried that, but I do try to throw in a little bit of a flair into it, where not just trying to sound monotone how you would sound on any other voicemail, but definitely trying to give some personality to the voice, because I also thought that it was beneficial to the university as well, where if you're receiving a voicemail, like even in today's day, like just receiving a voicemail, sometimes people don't even check it, but if
Nope.
they do, they'll at least see that, okay, someone actually cared about doing this. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting what you said earlier about just like kind of creative consulting and like continuity stuff. I think even in today's age of the kind of equity and inclusion that Hollywood is really trying to kind of hone in on, it goes a long way too, because you end up with, unfortunately, movies like Coco that had a great story behind it, and I loved the plot behind it, and I thought it was very authentic, but then the music was not at all. The music was not authentic to Mexican music. It wasn't even composed by someone who was Mexican. They didn't even hire a mariachi to do some of the mariachi songs, or a banda sinaloense that could do any of the songs that might have been able to have been incorporated with that. There was no like traditional regional Mexican music that was really implemented into that movie, which is like the only thing that I had as a problem with it. It was an A- for me, but it could have been a grand slam A+ had
What a
they
missed
just,
opportunity.
yeah. And it felt like, wow, it like Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California, I think they are, could have easily have picked out any mariachi in the LA area that could have helped them, at least with consulting, at least with some sort of creative consulting, with like, hey, listen, because I come from a family of mariachi performers and stuff like that, and one of my uncles, who's a violinist in a mariachi, he's like, there's a certain emotion that you have to bring out of the violin when you're playing a certain song in mariachi, and I just you didn't feel it in any of the songs from Coco. I mean, Recuérdame is a great song, but it's not authentic.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate.
Hmm. This is really good. This is really it I'm hoping that whoever listens to this, if they are in a place where they are doing casting or considering any sort of creative endeavor where people are represented, that they just realize we need, this is okay. This is why it's not just having one person from a group to be on board. It's here. You know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Don't they? I mean, don't large studios do, like, don't they have screenings for, like, and surveys,
can't
and then,
speak for
like, don't
large
they have, like,
studios. I can't
just,
speak for large studios, but
yeah.
here's what I hear over and over again in the consulting that I have done. I will hear a person in a leadership position say, "We pride ourselves on being inclusive. We pride ourselves on doing this." And I always ask, who is the we who is making this statement? It's never an underrepresented group. it's always a dominant group that's saying we this, we this, we this, making the decisions. But if that we was bigger, Coco would have been a different movie.
Yeah. And I think as someone who's, I guess I could consider myself kind of a Disney adult. I really like going to the parks and all that stuff. But I also saw the difference in between that movie and Encanto, which Encanto kind of follows Colombian culture. And I'm not as well educated on that, but I think that there was a difference between the way that the music felt and also the fact that Coco was made by Pixar and Encanto was made by Walt Disney Studios. And Walt Disney Studios is very, very good with their music. That's one of their strongholds ever since The Little Mermaid came out, is like music, like bringing in the musical style into film, really, really honed in, kind of that renaissance that they had, starting with the Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and all these other movies that come with their faults, of course, but I think that also kind of played into it too, that maybe Pixar didn't know kind of what they were getting themselves into when it came to trying to represent Mexican culture through the lens of one of Dia de los Muertos and also music, and which is such a big part of Mexican culture, because you look at the town that Miguel grew up in, it looks so authentic to a small pueblo in Mexico, like the way that they represented the land of the dead, and the way that the spirit, your spirit lives on in the memory of your loved ones, was beautiful. And I thought that was great, because it also gives a shout out to kind of the indigenous roots that people have in Mexican culture. It was just the music. It was the music that just they were at the finish line and they just tripped up.
They fumbled
right there.
Yeah, music is such an important part. I think what happened with Disney, I know that I've heard stories about Frozen, and they didn't realize that, like, that one song that like every schoolgirl sang like incessantly. My wife teaches young kids, and so she's like, oh my God, if they sing that song one more time. And like it caught, it was such a big hit. So now they're trying to capture that lightning in a bottle every time they make a movie, and see, like, maybe we got another one of these hits, like, because the money you make off of music, it's it's ridiculous. So the studio, like, because
Yeah, I was
that's
a
one of
senior
the
in high school when that came out, and
yeah that's one of the
trust me.
things about music, though, is like, especially being on YouTube. So like you have to be careful. So like I do a lot of videos where I'll take excerpts from movies. A lot of times I'll on this particular format, I'll talk to a friend and we'll have watched a movie and we'll review it. And then sometimes I'll drop little scenes in so people know what we're talking about. But if there's music in the scene, you have to be very careful, because if there's more than a few seconds, the YouTube algorithm will pick it up, and you'll be, you can't monetize your video. So like you're just, and so it's what I realized from that is that there's a lot of money being made off music. And you have to be very careful about crossing the line when you like take a sample, even unintentionally, even if I just want the video, so a lot of the times I'll drop the video and I have to cut the sound out. So I'll either like bring it in over top of our conversation and then fade the video in and out while we're talking underneath it. But sometimes you want the dialogue, right? Because sometimes it's the character, it's the words, it's the writing, or it's the way someone says it, So like, when, you.
So
Go ahead.
Diego, do you do any voices in Spanish?
I'm trying to think. Do I? Huh. Yeah, see, I don't watch, I think I don't watch enough like TV and movies in Spanish. I think the closest that I've gotten to like really, really watching something in Spanish is the Spanish version of the Latino version. It was because like they make that distinction in when it comes to subtitling of Shrek. And it's very, very, it's a testament as to why that movie is so amazing. And so it's such comedic genius, because it's hilarious in English, but even funnier in Spanish, which
Really?
is a testament. It's a testament to Eugenio Derbez, who's a Mexican comedian. And so when he was, I think he also did Mushu. So Disney and DreamWorks, like he's worked for both. He did Mushu. He did the Latino version of Mushu, and Disney was very, very rigid, very, very rigid about, how he could kind of go about things and how he could maybe put some flair in. They didn't let him. And then he talks about when he was approached for the role of Donkey, at like as the Latino actor, he basically was like, all right, can I kind of like throw in some flair and stuff like that? And he really, really was able to hone in at least his culture. I don't want to say that it kind of encapsulates Latin culture, because it's hard to pinpoint it. Like there's so many countries in Latin America that, you can't just pinpoint it on one culture. But when it came to him kind of honing in and presenting his upbringing and how he experienced his culture, it really, really came out, because you would see him use Mexican slang and you're like, oh wait, did he really just say that? And so there's like one scene where he's actually there's also the gingerbread man in that movie. I think if I do remember what he sounds like, I probably could do it, but I don't exactly remember. But Donkey, he has to go find a blue rose with red thorns. And so you see like, Eddie Murphy doing this, like blue roses, red thorns, blue roses, red thorns. I can't do Eddie Murphy, but he does a great job. But then you have Eugenio Derbez doing Donkey. He's like, flor azul, espinas rojas, flor azul, espinas rojas. Ay, esto hubiera sido más fácil si no fuera daltónico. And so like stuff like that it just felt so much funnier to me when I first watched it. And it was already like a hilarious movie in English, but it is a masterpiece for comedy in Spanish.
That's great.
I think it's, that's one of the things I've always found fascinating about translation, being that, there's a video that I did where I just took like the most famous line from like The Empire Strikes Back and just did it in like 5 different languages, so I just played it. So, no, I am your father, no, yo soy tu padre, and then it was, in French, and it was in Japanese, and it's like, if you do it often, that's an easy phrase. But then I did another video, one of my, a video game I was playing. I played so many times, called Fallout New Vegas. And I played it in Spanish, and I played it in Italian. And there was this one scene where there's this one character who says, loose lips sink ships. And I thought to myself, that's an idiom that's like, if you don't get the context of that, like that's not directly translatable. It can't be. So I played that scene and sure enough, the translation was completely different. So like in Spanish, it was something like, a closed mouth will attract no flies. La boca firma no something I'm not very good at Spanish.
La boca firme no atrae las moscas.
No entrar las moscas. That's it. So that's exactly what it said. So obviously that's a Spanish idiom. Like, is that something that you've heard your mother or your grandmother say or something like that?
I've never heard it, but it
okay.
something like
here's one that I've heard. Labios flojos hunden barcos.
What is it?
It's labios flojos hunden barcos, which
that's kind of the direct translation of loose lips sink ships.
Yeah, but like if you're not, I mean,
something that you could say.
There's no reason for a Spanish-speaking person to say that, because there weren't any. It came from German U-boats sinking, like transatlantic shipping in World War I, right? So that's not something that like Spain was involved in. That's not something that Mexico was involved in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like culturally, unless you're you're translating it from like a history lesson maybe. But like the Italian for that phrase was something about the tongue. You can kill more with the tongue than with the sword. Like it's just interesting because it gets the same point across, but completely different words. And so whenever I read something, like, you know, if I read like Livy, or if I read Homer, you know, something that's been translated from an obviously an ancient language, you know, the translation is indispensable, right?
Well, Diego and I can vouch for that when we read people like Michel Foucault, who wrote and spoke in French and whose work was translated by academics who didn't read or speak French necessarily. And here's the other thing. They also had their opinions about Foucault.
Right.
So they were translating it based on what they thought of him already. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you have the most translated book in history is the Bible, at least in my estimation. But yeah, I think when it comes to how phrases and kind of idioms and metaphors, all that transfers over to different languages, it's quite interesting how you know, I spend a lot of time in Mexico, and my cousin, he has a little bit of a grasp on English, and sometimes he'll read something, he's like, this does not make sense to me. He's like, can you like tell me why this is? I was like, oh, that's just a metaphor. Or he'll ask me like, hey, what does X mean? I'm like, that could mean 3 different things in 3 different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to like be specific here. It's kind of one of the reasons why, and my cousins always kind of says that like English is such a stupid language sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's
yeah,
an amalgam
I mean,
of so many languages that
exactly.
Yeah,
things don't always make sense or add up. Or
Take a Romance language and a Germanic language and then throw them together and see what happens.
I'm
And
glad I
then
learned first.
and it's true what you say, but like what I always thought was interesting was like poetry, right? So like, how do you get this stuff to rhyme in both languages? Somebody's manipulating something too far. There's no way. And you know, like a Spanish teacher of mine in high school gave me obras completas from Cervantes, right? And no offense to Cervantes, great writer, but like it's a lot easier to rhyme in Spanish than it is in English. You know what I mean? Like in Italian and in French and in all those Romance languages, there's a lot of rhyming. It's very, you know, it's easier to rhyme. A lot of the verb forms are, you know, have the same vowel ending, and that's not the case in English. You know, so it's just, you know, in order to make something rhyme, but so if you're translating Dante into English and it still rhymes, God bless you, but you've got to be manipulating the meaning somehow, right? You have to be. There's no way that can be pure Dante. So eventually you got to learn, if you want to learn Dante, you got to read Italian at some point. This is what I'm convinced of.
I think that I mean, not to tie it back to Disney, but that's kind of one way that
lead to Shrek.
Well, not just to Shrek, it's because Phil Collins did the soundtrack to Tarzan, and he himself also did the Spanish versions of those songs. But you could tell also that some of the language that he was using was more Spaniard Spanish, was more like that authentic Castellano, instead of kind of Latin American Spanish that you would find a bit more common over here in the Western Hemisphere, which was quite interesting when I first heard it. But you still get that same kind of feeling from that song. So I think it really, really highlights how well a certain art is done when it can be translated and still, you know, extract that same emotion and give you that same meaning as well.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, a good translation, but some of the fun of learning a second language is the mistakes and the absurdity, right? So like I took in my senior year, I took Spanish in first period and I was in third year, and then I took fourth year French the next period. And my French teacher was so mad at me. She's like, "You're speaking French with a Spanish accent." I'm like, because I just spoke Spanish for an hour, of course I am, you know? So, it was like,
Yeah,
it was funny.
I think one of the fascinating things for me about when someone does voices like you do, how you just go in and out. Because if I'm not mistaken, Diego, one of your videos was somebody kind of challenging you, right? They were firing things at you, and you
Yeah.
had to do. I can't even believe that anyone could do that. First of all,
I think it helps that these are all characters that I'm familiar with, for one, and that are like from my childhood. So it's like firing off those neurons right away, where you can go from I'm trying to remember some of the ones that were on there. Like Carl from Jimmy Neutron. You have, oh hey Jimmy, where's Jimmy's mom? And it's like this like very like nerdy nasally kid that is just so distinct. But then you have someone like Stewie Griffin, who's kind of difficult for me. I had to do a couple takes on that one, but it's like, Brian, like that type of stuff that where he
It's got that
where
cry kind of voice.
where you actually see someone like Seth MacFarlane do, because he does so many voices on Family Guy. So he'll be doing like, hey Peter. I can't even do Brian, but he'll be like, hey Peter, and he's like, oh Brian, I'm not feeling so well today. Like stuff like that is just very, very difficult. And I mean, at least I have a couple seconds between that, but someone like Seth MacFarlane is literally having a conversation between three different characters while he's doing all three voices. And then Quagmire comes in and is like, hey guys, how's it going? Like out of nowhere. It's quite difficult. And I mean, that kind of like rapid fire stuff is interesting, and it's fun. And it's very, very challenging. I did have to do quite a few takes.
I couldn't believe you did that. I just thought that's really unkind to do to somebody.
Yeah, because I'm able to do something like Rick Sanchez talking to Morty Smith. Like Morty, you totally messed this up, Morty. Oh geez, Rick. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. I have an exam tomorrow. Like stuff like that. It can be a little bit difficult, because you also have to be thinking about like what that person would be saying in that moment without just kind of reading a line verbatim. Where you want to also, I mean, at least with that rapid fire video, they give you the line to say and you just say it. But when when someone like tells you on the spot, like, hey, I heard you can do Rick Sanchez and Rick and Morty, can you do a conversation between them? I'm like, okay. I have to think about the context where I'm in. It's like, if I'm at work, I can't say the type of things that Rick Sanchez would say. But at the same time, if I'm at a pub, it's like, it's whatever. I can just kind of fire off with whatever comes to my mind. But yeah, like the rapid fire stuff is very, very interesting, very fascinating especially when I heard Seth MacFarlane really do it. I mean, also Mel Blanc, I believe was Looney Tunes character.
That's like, exactly what I was thinking when you said that. It's like, I think you could do Bugs Bunny, talking to Foghorn Leghorn. I mean, of course, they're so distinct, right?
Foghorn Leghorn and Porky are so difficult, because you have to do the voice and the impediment.
Yeah.
And that's
so
very,
like
very
Sylvester the cat. And that's one of the things that Mel was so good at, was that he added to those characters, he added those voice impediments that made them distinctive. So like, Sylvester's not just speaking his lines, he's spitting his lines, right?
Yeah.
So like, and it's all full of S's, as many S's as you can stick in there, right?
Yeah.
So it's, it's
I think there's there's a clip of him, I think it was on Leno, where he's just like giving a rundown of like how he does his voices and where they come from and stuff like that. Like, where he talks about how he got Yosemite Sam, how he got Foghorn Leghorn and all that stuff. Like it's fascinating how he created these voices. And that's sometimes the most difficult thing, where I've had people ask me like, have you created your own voices? I'm like, I try to think about it. I was like, and the closest thing that I can think of is like the voice that I use to like talk to my dog sometimes when I'm just goofing off with so it's like little things like that. But or like if I were to give my dog a voice, I guess, like, if
what would your dog's voice be?
She's I would say she's kind of a timid voice. Very. I don't know if you've heard of Marcel the Shell with shoes on. It's she, the actress. I forget her name. She was on Parks and Recreation as like a side character for some time. But I always like whenever I see my dog, like I say hi. I was like, oh, like very very timid, very excited type of voice, but yeah, because I've always just thought of dogs as just these like very loving and goofy characters.
Couple things just for but that actor is Jenny Slate, who does Marcel. For
Oh,
those
okay, yeah,
who
Jenny
are
Slate.
interested. And
Yeah,
also
quite
speaking
hilarious.
of Mel Blanc, he was also the original voice of Barney Rubble in the Flintstones. Just put it out there. But what I'm thinking, you could do a voice. All you would need is a script. That's all.
Yeah.
And you'd create the voice to go with that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were just doing that today. Actually, the squirrels that we feed in the backyard. So my wife's obsessed. She'll feed them 3 times a day. But when they run out of food, it's like, but Mama, we need some food out here. We're really hungry now. Please come and feed us. And it's weird how like, especially with animals, especially cute animals, like, you anthropomorphize. There's a voice in my head for like, the cat that I had when I was 8 years old, the dog I had when I was 12, like, you can imagine it. And it's partially to do with the voices, the sounds that they actually made. But, but part of it's like this imaginary conversation that you have, or actual conversations you have with your dog, even if they're one-sided,
Yeah, because my dog's she's very loving and she's very outgoing, but every time you kind of see your dog's ears pinned back a little bit, you're like, oh, you're like a little you're like nervous right now. And it's like that's kind of I think what inspired that that little voice that I do for her sometimes.
It's that sympathy. One of the things you were saying about Seth MacFarlane, I think one of the reasons I have trouble with Seth's voices sometimes is because he's got that New England accent, even when he doesn't want to. It's there. He uses it. I mean, obviously, when he does Peter, you always have that, or Lois really does it too, which is great. She plays off. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah,
I'm holding iced tea, Peter. And like, it's just Alex is Borstein. She's hilarious. But but he's always got a hint of that. And it's funny because you'll see him in other things. So like when he was doing that Western, A Million Days to Die in the West or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're out West, but you still have a little bit of that John F. Kennedy thing going on there. You know what I mean? That Providence,
Patrick,
Rhode Island, that Boston accent,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And Diego, it's a question for you as well. Is it appropriate to ask or to put links to his voiceovers in this video somewhere?
I have absolutely no issue with that. It's totally up to Diego if he wants.
Is that legal?
Is that? Yeah, totally. I have no issue with it. I haven't posted a video in a while.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe it might be the catalyst to start it up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want, I could even drop in some stuff in the video if you want it, if you gave me permission to do that. But
yeah, totally.
Okay. But definitely email me any links you want and we'll put them right in the description. I mean, I do that for anybody that I interview that wants to promote anything. And the great thing, and that's one of the things I love about this platform. I don't know much about TikTok, except that it's like popular and it's short and and it's a certain style. But YouTube, one of the things I love about what the YouTube community is trying to do is they're trying to build a community of creators, right? Yeah. So like, I know there's a lot of stuff in the early days, YouTube, they got panned for a lot of things that happened. People were posting some really nasty, violent stuff. They've cracked down on that a lot. And now, like, if you want to be a serious contributor, they really like people that collaborate, They really like when they're creators like talk to each other and use each other's stuff, and they're making the platform more conducive to that, with permissions, of course. But yeah, that's exciting. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to meet you actually, was because there were a couple things, the voice acting thing, because that's something that I'm slowly embarking on, trying to figure out how to break into that. And obviously you have from my estimation, you have way more talent than I have, but I think it's something that like I would really like to investigate, and and there's no reason why we can't keep in touch and kind of give each other pointers on, like, I don't know if that's something you're going to try to investigate as a sideline or as a career path, but I'd actually wouldn't mind trying to make some money at it. And
I think the world needs to hear your voices.
I think it's fun, and the thing is, like, I don't know about you, I enjoy doing it. I just think it's like, and it's I don't know. It's like anything. It's like if you're born with a talent, why not develop it? I have a friend who's an amazing artist. Like, he started out by drawing cartoons, in high school in math class, which is why he became a physicist. But anyway, but he still takes classes, and he's an incredible caricaturist now, like really good. Like, he's gotten stuff published in magazines and that sort of thing. So why not? Why not try to, like, develop the talent?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like I mentioned before, it was just kind of like something that I would do to goof off with my friends, and I figured, like, hey, I mean, I can always just post something online and just kind of to express myself. That's kind of the beauty of social media, is that in its core, it gives you an outlet to just like put something out there, and if someone likes it, they like it. They don't, they don't. So yeah, I mean, it definitely would be something that I'd be interested in pursuing, because I have a lot of fun with it, and I have never kind of looked into how it would be like to really take it serious.
Well, you're good. I mean, I watched that TikTok that Dan gave me. You're good. Like, there's no doubt. Like, I don't know the character's name, but she's got like the bangs and the weird hair and these like little black glasses, and I don't even know what movie it's from, but you were like, I've seen excerpts, and you were like spot on with that character.
Yeah, that's Edna Mode from The Incredibles. What is it? Who are you?
That's awesome. It's like, what is that, Russian, or is she like,
I don't know. I
German, Russian? I don't know what that. Yeah.
In the movie, she's a fashion designer, so I'm thinking Parisian.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
that's funny.
Even Eastern European, something like that.
A friend of mine was on.
Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying before. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but when you pay homage to a character, you don't get caught up in trying to do a language.
Yeah.
Precisely, because it's about the character, because maybe they don't do their language precisely.
Right.
That's actually true, because whenever if I remember seeing a video of, I think it was Jimmy Fallon doing like Michael Caine, and I was like, that sounds like I could do Michael Caine. So I was just like watching I was watching The Dark Knight, and since he's Alfred, he tells Bruce, he's like, some people just want to watch the world burn. It's like he like speaks like Michael Caine speaks with his lips out a little bit, but it just I lose it eventually.
It's for me, it's the vowel. So Michael Caine, right? Yeah. Whenever he says his own name, it's Caine. It's Caine.
And he doesn't even say, he doesn't do the M. He's like Michael. He sounds like he's like.
I didn't catch that part. That's great.
Michael Caine.
It's not neat that they catch that. I remember an interview with him. I don't know if it was Leno, but it was somebody was saying, "Well, you do a lot of movies, And he says, I wanted a swimming pool, so I did this movie. So, but he said they were asking him about the parts that he plays. Why do you always play like these guys that are like, real classy and like always get the lady and all such? Says, well, I'll read the script. He says, if I see that I'm going to be crawling around the mud, I don't take the part. He says, if I see I'm going to be standing around holding a martini glass in a tuxedo and I'm getting a beautiful lady, I'm going to take the dame part. It's like, well, there you go, but I mean, obviously he gets to pick his roles, but it's pretty, I just, yeah, Michael Caine's one of my heroes. Good stuff.
Right on, guys. I actually need to split because I've got something else coming up on the half hour.
Great.
Thanks for hooking. I hope we get to do this again. I want to hear some more voices, maybe even play some of your music. And I just don't want you to, you're not doing music maybe at the moment, but it's there. It's in there.
Yeah, give me some links to the music. We can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
I think I'm also gonna split. I do have to get some food in my system. I
This is
just got home
perfect.
from work not too long ago.
well, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time to come on the show, and yeah, hopefully this will be the beginning of a couple conversations. Great to meet you.
Absolutely, yeah. Hey, it was great to meet you, Pat, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And Dan, it was a pleasure to see you again.
We'll stay in touch, and the world needs to hear your voices. That's
Thank
all
you
I'm
so
saying.
much.
Thanks everybody out there for watching, and we're gonna stop the video.